Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, more twists and turns in the case against the parents of the alleged Oxford school shooter. As the parents try to get out on bail to await trial, a friend of theirs with a shady past is keeping them behind bars. Julie Keil from Saginaw Valley State University is here with her perspective on this unique and troubling case. She and I will also talk about Title IX, the law enacted 50 years ago designed to equal the playing field for women in college athletics, is falling woefully short. It's also failing to adequately investigate many sexual assault cases. Plus, what does 2023 look like for businesses in our region, and how are they preparing for a likely recession ahead? Matt Felan with the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance is here with some insight. But first, we would like to hear from you to help drive the conversation here on the show. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook and Twitter. You can email us, or you can dial into our follow-up hotline to voice your opinion or suggest future show topics. And if you'd like to watch any of our past shows this season, just log on to deltapublicmedia.org. Up first, Julie Keil, Saginaw Valley State University political science professor. She's a regular on the show, and she's back just before the holidays, so we're glad to see you again.
Glad to be back, Mike. Thanks.
A lot of our viewers may not know you have a law degree, so we are going to tap into that legal mind just for a moment for our first topic.
Just first note, I'm a retired attorney, so I can't give any legal advice to you.
Okay, fair enough.
Information, yes. Advice, no.
Good, we clarify that like a good former attorney.
Like a former attorney,
yes.
Well, you're an attorney for life, but
that's true.
Practicing, yeah.
Let's talk about the twists and turns in this Oxford school shooter case. This incident happened a year ago this month. The alleged shooter, Ethan Crumbley, pled guilty recently to killing 4 of his classmates and several others, including a teacher. He's going to be sentenced here in a couple of months. And at the same time, his parents, have been behind bars on involuntary manslaughter. Mm-hmm. So let me just start with that. I mean, the fact the parents are charged in connection to their son's actions, I think feels like it's unique. Not aware of too many cases like it. As far as holding the parents accountable in a school shooting case.
And it is, I won't say totally unique, but it's pretty unusual, let's put it that way. There's been a lot of discussion about the case because he is a juvenile, and the way that you treat a juvenile and the parents' control of them is different than you would with an adult. So there have been several cases where adult parents have, I won't say necessarily facilitated a child or their adult child committing a crime, but it certainly did not stop them from doing it. So you have to kind of look at the difference between the parents in terms of juveniles and adults. In this particular case, Crumbley is a juvenile. I think he was 15 years old when it occurred.
Right.
And his parents gave him the gun that he was able to use for the shooting. And despite a lot of warnings about behavior on his part from both the school and from other people, they went ahead and let him have the gun, and of course he used it to kill 4 of his classmates. So it's involuntary manslaughter for the parents, not him. He obviously was charged with homicide, but involuntary manslaughter is where you don't intentionally see that someone dies, but you don't stop that from happening if you're aware of the fact that that could be an outcome of it. So there's 2 different types of manslaughter, voluntary and involuntary. This is involuntary because they didn't give him the gun for the purpose of him going and shooting somebody,
sure,
obviously. But the question is whether or not they had a responsibility to seeing all those warning signs, particularly the day of the event,
right,
when they kept on saying, no, it's okay, and sending him back to school and refusing to take action. Should they be held responsible? And this is all part of a bigger discussion in the United States about gun control and whether gun control should be the problem with the government or the problem with the people. And if we're going to say people should be responsible for making their own choices,
well,
their own
guns
decisions,
don't kill, people do. That's what the gun rights activists say, right?
Sure.
Right.
So the natural corollary to that is then if you have children that are committing crimes, then the parents should be responsible for them.
Sure.
Because if the state's not responsible through gun control, then it has to go back to the parents. So that one seems kind of a simple choice to me.
Right. As far as other cases, we've heard of like toddlers that get a hold of a gun that isn't locked, they shoot themselves or shoot somebody else. We've seen the parents charged. That makes sense. This is a little bit different. He was a little bit older.
Those are usually more like, it could be involuntary manslaughter, but it also is often just a negligent case too, where
Sure.
by not locking up the gun, you've been negligent in your actions. So it's a little bit less of a charge than what we're talking about here. I did notice there have been a couple of other efforts, at least, to try people for similar charges. The person was involved in the 9 people that died in Illinois last year at the 4th of July parade. His parents had sponsored him to get a gun, which he wasn't able to get because he wasn't over the age of 21, so he couldn't get the gun himself. So he had to have his parents sponsor for him to get the gun. So his parents signed off that he would be capable of handling the gun, it would be a safe bet to be able to get it. And they also, at that same point, knew that he had previously attempted to commit suicide, had made a number of threats. The police had arrived and had confiscated guns, or not guns, I'm sorry, knives from his house. So there was all kinds of red flags coming up about this person, but the parent went ahead and signed for it anyway. And so should that parent be responsible when they signed for it, knowing the child has problems?
Sure. Well, another issue here that was sort of strange that came out here in the last week, another strange twist with the Crumbleys. A friend of theirs, a guy identified as BJ, has a shady past, has come into question. It's some of the Crumbleys a parent would like to stay with or hang out with if they are let out on bail. Prosecutors say, you know, he's not trustworthy, he's got a history of drug issues, financial problems, or at least tried to sneak into a woman's locker room wearing a transgender shirt. I mean, he doesn't seem to be an upstanding guy.
Well,
yeah.
But the bigger question is whether or not he's capable of being able to help them to maintain their conditions, their bond, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if they're going to get bond out, there are conditions they have to meet. They can't afford to pay for the bond. I think it's a $500,000 bond.
Right.
And they don't have that kind of money, so they can't afford to do it. So the thought would be that he would be acting as some sort of a guarantor or sponsor for them when they get out of jail.
If they do, right.
If they get out of jail, because
Sure.
they previously had, theoretically at least, had tried to escape and run away from the charges and were found and brought back. So obviously you need to have some sort of insurance they're going to actually be there for the trial. But you're right, I mean, this is a very shady person, and again, it shows kind of their complete lack of awareness
Right.
of what's a good sponsor, what is a good choice to make. So they're making another bad choice, just like they did with their own son.
Right, and you have to assume the defense team was somewhat aware of what they were trying to do and who they would be let out with, or if they maybe dropped the ball on that. But it just seemed kind of strange here, I guess. But
Yeah, I don't know that the defense team knew much about the person. They should have certainly checked into their past. But again, it's kind of unknown as to really what information they have. But it's a terrible idea. So,
Right.
you know, would the same case happen if you had an adult that was not needing sponsorship? You'd have to have a pretty strong case to be able to show that they should be found responsible for what happened with their adult child.
Sure.
But if your adult child is mentally ill and isn't able to
Right.
control themselves, like I believe the person in Illinois was potentially, then shouldn't the parents still have some sort of responsibility for them, particularly if they're living with them?
Right.
And so deep, dark issues.
There'll be more on this after the new
Yeah.
year ahead here. Let's change gears. Let's talk about the USA Today investigation over Title IX. Title IX was enacted 50 years ago to ban sex discrimination across all aspects of education, higher education primarily, including athletics, sexual harassment. In a nutshell, this investigation sort of found that Title IX has been a little bit of a failure or woefully inadequate. So you have some inside baseball on this, not only as at SVSU on the Title IX committee, but as a high schooler, right?
So I'm not going to be speaking as part of my committee that I'm on. So
Okay.
I actually act as a decision maker, so I'm not going to claim any expertise in it for that particular thing, although I am on the committee. So I'm not speaking for the committee. But I did have certainly experience with myself as a high school student because I'm old enough to have been a recipient of the first Title IX years, actually. My school decided to apply Title IX before Title IX happened because they thought they'd be proactive. So they decided instead of just having cheerleading and majorettes, they would allow girls to have a swim program and a gymnastics program. And I was on the first and second swim teams from my high school, which was great. And we actually got a chance to participate, got a chance to compete at the Saginaw Valley Championships. My team was the first Saginaw Valley champion from our school, which was great.
Congratulations.
Boys and girls, not just women.
And hang your hat on that.
Hang your hat on that,
That's
yep.
right.
And the result of that was we were not allowed to go to the banquet. We were not allowed to get varsity jackets or varsity letters because we were women, we were girls, and we were not the correct people at the beginning of varsity letter. It just wasn't going to be appropriate. So it's come a long way since then. So I have to say that much. At least if looking over my 50 years, I'm impressed to see we've gotten as far as we have. But there certainly still are some issues with it from the sports program point of view.
Yeah, what this investigation sort of found, USA Today, is that sort of the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Education are supposed to sort of enforce it, the violations. They found that they don't do a whole lot. Cases drag on for years. There's virtually no penalties for violators. They sort of nudge schools toward compliance, and they say it's sort of a staffing issue. They don't really have time. They don't have the resources.
And there's probably a lot of truth to that because there is not a lot of money in Title IX for both the universities or for the government as well. It's also sort of an unfunded mandate. They're mandating you have to have women's and men's sports that are equal in all ways, and you have to be able to show that and assess it on a regular basis. That's expensive for universities. And so telling them they have to go through these steps results in them backtracking on a lot of programs just in general in order to be able to keep the equality between the two groups. They don't get any money from this mandate of having to have the same programs for women. Not to excuse anything they do, because there's absolutely some problems that happen with it. But you have to look at it from the university's point of view. Their football team gets on TV, they get all kinds of revenue from it, they have coaches they pay millions of dollars to. Girls softball is also on TV. It's on one of the channels we never get a chance to see. It doesn't have the same kind of press.
Sure.
Football players go from college into the pros. There are girls softball teams that actually do play around the country. There's women swimmers that win Olympic medals, et cetera. But it's not as lucrative for schools. So it's
Right.
a real push-pull with the money issue.
So the final point on this, for this segment, at SVSU, I know you're sort of the decision maker, but what have you found SVSU in terms of compliance on Title IX?
Overall, I'd say I'm quite impressed with the program at SVSU. I think that they have done a great job of working with the new regulations. When President Trump became president, his office required all sorts of new rules regarding due process rights for both sides in cases. And that's been a real difficult thing for schools to adjust to. And I think overall Saginaw Valley's done a great job with that process. And so, I mean, I see that there are some challenges with it. I belong to a listserv, so I hear all the questions every day that people post about these things. But they're truthfully trying to resolve these problems and not just hide them. There's a lot of discussion how about best practices and how to go about bringing out the regulations so they're being met. So if there's lack of compliance, I think that the Kentucky case you're talking about with the sports issue, that one's kind of an egregious one you can easily see. I think that there's a lot of attempt to really do the right thing with the sexual harassment and sexual violence cases, dating violence cases.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on this because there's so many facets, so many sides to this that we could, and maybe we'll do that another time. So
Okay, sounds good.
you've come full circle on this. You know, from 50 years ago was it enacted, and doing some swimming at a high school, and here you are now.
And today, Dow High's girls swimming team is still one of the best sports teams at Dow High. So
how about that? That's where it started.
50 years of practice.
Hey, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Always enjoy having a good insight, and enjoy your holiday.
Okay, great. You too, Mike.
We'll have you back in the new year, that's for sure.
I'll be here. Thanks.
Okay. Well, as Julie walks out, our friend Matt Felan, also a regular on the show, is back. He is with the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance. He will change seats with Julie. He is the president and the CEO of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance, and that was seamless. Nobody fell off, you know?
No problems at all. Great coordination.
So before we look into your crystal ball for 2023 as the head of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance, looking ahead what businesses might be seeing, for viewers maybe not familiar with the scale and scope of the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance, kind of what are you on for? What is the organization about?
Sure. You know, our number one goal is to really get people across this region working together. You know, Mike, for years, we were pretty parochial. Folks would stay in Bay County, Saginaw County, Midland County. Isabella County was a whole nother world that was down M20 in the middle of the state. And what we've realized is that when we work together, whether it be through economic development, talent, population growth, a litany of issues, that we're so much stronger together when we really look at how our region competes. We compete all the time against other regions, whether it's the Grand Rapids region, Metro Detroit, the Triangle of North Carolina, Cincinnati. We had to be able to have a larger base in order to compete, and so our number one goal is really to bring various sectors together to make us stronger.
So as you look at, you've got like a who's who on your board, so you're a great collaborator. There's so many people involved. So in this last quarter, as you look ahead to 2023 in the Alliance, when you're dealing with all these businesses, what are you hearing? How are they sort of preparing? What are they thinking You got that recession kind of looming. So
Yeah.
what is this first quarter, second quarter going to look like in 2023? What are they thinking?
Yeah, so what's great in order to be able to look forward, you kind of have to look back a little bit. And in the very, just recent future, we've had some amazing announcements here that have really kind of been at the top of everybody's lips. So if we look, for example, in Saginaw County, Hemlock Semiconductor announced a pretty large expansion. They're going to really be able to compete more on the solar side in the solar industry. Massive legislation with the CHIPS Act. There's solar legislation that's really going to make Hemlock Semiconductor an even larger player here in really just not in the state, but across the country and the world. And it's done because so many people work together. In this case, Saginaw Future, HSC, our state legislators, the MEDC, Thomas Township, took a lot of folks to come together to do that. Same thing in Bay County. The Bay Future did a really amazing job in finding the perfect location for SK Siltron. The president was just here last month, and so if you look at what our leaders in the country are talking about, whether it be in the semiconductor industry, the chips industry, you see some things that are really going on here that have us well positioned. Or if you just look at during COVID, right before COVID hit, Dow DuPont had gone through that merger and they knew they were going to break off. But we've really diversified, Mike. So now we have Dow, DuPont, Corteva, HSC, SK. There's so many good things going on that has really, built us to a spot where we're in a pretty decent position considering the challenges that are ahead of us.
Well, you're at the front lines. You always have been, and you're a great cheerleader for the area as well. So one big issue all the businesses are dealing with is staffing, through the pandemic, post-pandemic. Talent acquisition is the term. So how are we doing with that? How do we have to sort of reinvent the wheel, find out new ways, innovative ways to develop talent into the future?
Yeah, so talent is always so complicated because you have to look at it really in two different ways. So number one, companies need talent today. So if you're a company today, you need people, you need the right skills, you may need skilled trades, there's a variety of things you need. But at the same point, we have to make sure that we have the talent pipeline that's in place from K-12 all the way through. We really talk about, from cradle to career now is kind of that education line, and it really never ends. So everyone is working hard on that talent front, and we're definitely doing and making some great progress on that K-12 spot. One of the biggest things I've seen that excites me is I feel like we windshield wipered for a long time, Mike. We would go from, you got to get a 4-year degree to, oh no, we need skilled trades, or we need a 4-year degree, or for a while we got there, you're going to fail if you don't have that 4-year degree. I think this region has done a much better job of saying we need both. Yes, we need 4-year degrees, engineers, architects, very highly skilled people, but at the same time, we need sheet metal workers, and we need electricians, and we need plumbers, and our skilled trades, I think, is really having a renaissance right now in this region, where if I talk to a class or we host a program to get job shadows, so many of the kids are really interested in the skilled trades in a way that maybe we haven't seen in a long time.
And you've been talking about that for a long time. We've had a couple of governors here. Whitmer, Snyder before, have been talking about skilled trades. So you think we're making some headway there? Finally?
We absolutely, and where we're making it is, I think for a while, Mike, parents thought if my kid goes into the skilled trades, we're somehow failing or they're not doing well. And I think what maybe parents are saying now is, hey, you can send a kid to any university and they're going to come back potentially with massive debt, and can they get the right job, or are they going to be able to get a job here, and are they going to go and leave us? And I think what they're saying is, wait a minute, you can go and be an apprentice and go through a program, and after 5 years have made $250,000 versus getting yourselves $250,000 in debt. And I think as parents are seeing really kind of the economics behind it, there's a culture change where people realize, these are great paying jobs that a lot of kids just love to do this work, and so I think we're seeing a little bit of a culture shift.
Yeah. When you talk about talent acquisition, it's not one size fits all. I mean, you've got on one side, you've got retail, maybe servers, waiters, hospitality workers. You've got folks that might want to work at Hemlock Semiconductor, and so over this last year, you've seen a lot of business sort of getting creative, hiring bonuses, offering flex time, maybe offering hybrid models, working from home. I think the potential employees maybe have the upper hand here. So are you still seeing these innovative, creative ways to attract people?
Everyone has to. And
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, our region's going to have to get used to some things that maybe it's not used to. So for example, I think we're going to have to bring more talent in from the outside. We're going to have to be a welcoming community to more immigrants. And a lot of our companies, whether it's Dow or Nextier, do a very good job of that now, but I think that's only going to increase. Or, you know, I've always tried to explain this, but our region is a college region. All of our towns are college towns. We're home to 8 universities and community colleges. And even right now, despite some of the challenges in higher ed in terms of enrollment, we still have 54,000 college students in the Great Lakes Bay region right now. And so I think the next thing we need to do is maybe give more of these kids that are coming from downstate, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, more of a reason to stay here, and more to say, oh, look, I can stay in this region and work for X company, Y company, that are doing really creative, innovative things in their particular space.
Yeah, we used to talk about the brain drain, right? We're really good at educating them, but then they leave, so we have to find a way, like you said, to keep them here. The other issue that we face, that I know you wanted to talk about, is the population decline. Certainly in the latest census, we lost population again. I think it cost us a seat or 2 in the House, which in essence, that gives us sort of less influence in D.C. So from a business standpoint, what does that really mean? What can we do differently in terms of attracting these new residents or new businesses? Can we reverse that trend? Yeah,
no, Michigan has had this problem for quite a long time. In our region, we struggle with this more than anywhere else. You know, Bay County is the oldest population in the state. So, you know, I will tell you, I think people are pretty focused on it. Our retiring Senator Ken Horn has a plan to increase population in Michigan by 1 million by 2030. I think there's a few things that are going to happen that we have to do. It's like I said, we're going to have to bring in talent from the outside. We're going to have to bring in talent from around the world. We just kind of understand with the population trends right now, how many people are having kids, where things are at. We are going to have to be a state, a region, a community that brings a lot more talent in. There's no question there. But we just have to do a better job of giving people a reason to live here, which always means better jobs, better paying jobs, innovative jobs, work flexibility. And then, Mike, I'll tell you, you know, we were chatting with I was chatting with some of the folks in the studio earlier. We're going to get some nice advantages in terms of, you know, they're talking about the climate in Michigan, you know, in the next 25 years being that of Kentucky or Tennessee. And then on top of it, the water, which we are surrounded by. It's just going to make us a very desirable place to live, to raise a family. So we're going to have a few advantages, but I think between the two, we have some work to do. But we definitely, we need to focus on population. And the reason why, and you brought it up, each of the last 10 years, we keep losing a member of Congress, which means we lose clout, we lose funding, we lose dollars, we lose infrastructure dollars, we lose education dollars. I mean, it is a drain on us. We've got to stop that trend and really become a state that can grow once again.
Yeah, it made me think of the Pure Michigan campaign, which has been highly successful. It certainly put a mirror on our state that's, oh my gosh, there's so much here, not just up north, but all around the state. This week there was an earthquake in California. We know what's happened in Florida the last 6 months with hurricanes and tropical storms. In Arizona, it's hotter than the Dickens. And you've got Michigan, the heart of the Midwest, plenty of water, plenty of land. I can see that happening. We have to do a better job of promoting it, I guess. But
yeah, and especially, you know, right now, the week we're about to have weather-wise, it can be tough.
Right.
But I definitely sense that weather has, you know, at least in the last 30 to 40 years, has definitely moderated a little bit. It's a slow change, but it's just one of many factors. I think at the end of the day, people still have the same idea. They want to raise a family and have great vacations and have good communities to live in. And if you look at our region, Mike, you know, in the last 10 to 20 years, think of what's happened to downtown Bay City, downtown Midland, the rebirth of Saginaw. Mount Pleasant's downtown is beautiful. We have abundant housing, different options, great quality of life. We can go watch pro golf, pro hockey, pro baseball. It's just an amazing place to live, and that's why folks like us exist. We go out and we're trying to tell that story to any and everyone who will listen, to say, you know what, the next time you're thinking of visiting, traveling, opening a company, settling down, moving home, this is a great place to raise your family. Come back here and you know, come back with your husband or wife and raise your family here. you're going to find good prosperity.
Absolutely. I see a lot of people in my community doing that. Before I get you out of here for this live portion of the show, where are we on the education front? You did mention higher education. We're a gold mine here with the higher ed. You've sat on school boards. I think you still do, right?
I do.
Okay,
yeah.
in Bay City. Staffing's an issue, teacher shortages through the pandemic. Education was certainly something that we looked at with the lockdowns and so forth, so now we're getting beyond that. Are we making headway there? I mean, that's an issue.
We are, but I'll tell you, I have some pretty big concerns on a few fronts. So, and it goes actually between education and healthcare. You know, being a teacher, the amount of kids going into teaching is starting to decrease, and that's alarming. We want more of our students that really want to go and continue in education, actually turn to that teaching side. The demand is down a little bit. I think part of that was from COVID and the challenges. Same thing that you'd see in nursing, right? You just don't see as many people that are as before COVID, with everything we went through, going, kind of through hell and back. Not as many people are interested in nursing. So we're going to have to get creative on both fronts of, how do we get more kids interested in both? But I think at the end of the day, and I think education is doing this, is it's understanding that we have to train our kids, maybe not even for a career, but more of a skill set. The ability to communicate, the ability to understand technology, the ability to work in a problem-solving manner, to work in small groups. I think education is really catching on to that. I think some good changes are being made. A lot more has to be done.
Right.
But I at least see things, at least in the district I sit in Bay City. We've taken Handy, our middle school, and we've turned it into a project-based learning where we're really urging our kids to work in small groups, to communicate, to problem solve, to work together. And I think you're just going to see a lot more where education realizes, hey, we're going to need to make changes to meet really the needs of our employers as we go.
Yeah, at the end of the day,
on.
if we're not educating the next generation, everything we're talking about here from an economic standpoint, you can just throw it out the water. They've got to come out. They've got to be create those jobs and take those jobs and move this region forward. Always great to see you. I'm going to have you stick around for the after show segment because we got a lot more to talk about. So stay right there. And that's our show for tonight. But be sure to join us again in the new year on Tuesday, January 10th, as we take a break for the holiday season. In the meantime, hit me up on social media or dial into our follow-up hotline. I would really love to hear from you to drive the conversation on the show. Thanks for joining us tonight, and enjoy the holiday season. Have a good night.